You might have already seen our full detailed range review on the 2021 Isuzu D-Max, where we covered off pretty much everything you need to know about the new Ute. But in this test, we're going over this particular model. It's the X-Terrain, the top of the range dual cab Ute in the new Isuzu D-Max lineup. In this review, we're doing things a little bit differently. No off-road, no heavy load. Instead, we're just gonna see what the X-Terrain is like to live with on a day-to-day basis, because you see so many dual cab Utes out there with nothing in the back, just running around town. So that's what we're gonna do with this Ute. If you want to know more about what it's like off-road, we've got an adventure review on the LSU spec, and we've also got a tradie review on the SX spec if Ute things are what you do with your Ute. In this review, I'll be covering off a bunch of stuff on the X-Terrain, and you can see the time codes here if you want to jump ahead, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can scrub ahead using the chapter markers below. And if you are watching on YouTube, please don't forget, hit like, hit subscribe, share this video with your friends, and ring that bell for us, because we want to keep you up to date with everything that's happening in the Australian new car market. This range-topping X-Terrain is a new nameplate for the D-Max lineup, and it's a bit more affordable than some competitor flagship variants. Here's the list price at the time of filming. That's the price before on-road costs. There are drive-away deals being done too, so see the written review for more info. The X-Terrain is only available as a dual cab 4-wheel drive pickup, and it only comes with an automatic transmission, because that's what buyers want after all. Righto, let's take a look inside the D-Max X-Terrain. So does it feel like a flagship Ute? Well, as soon as I sat in here, I thought, yeah, it does. It's got a lot of lovely elements to the cabin in the X-Terrain. Things like from this leather steering wheel to the leather accented seats. It's not full leather. Some people might find that a little bit annoying, but I don't. I think it's actually quite a nice finish. And speaking of finishes, there's nice materials across the top of the dashboard. And while you do get a lot of hard wearing sort of plastic bits here and there, at least on the doors, there's some nice soft finishes as well. It does add to the ambience of the cabin. And in the X-Terrain, you get a dark headliner. I'm not so fond of those, but apparently some people love them. In terms of other nice elements, there's a 4.2-inch screen in front of the driver with digital speedo and a bunch of other menus. And that's also where you see some of your safety systems working actively on the screen, so that's pretty neat. And the 9-inch touchscreen media system is, well, takes a little bit of getting used to in terms of the native menus built into it. But if you're using it just for Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which I assume most people will be, it's going to be perfectly fine and very easy to operate. It does have a real wow moment when you sit in here and you see this big screen in the middle of the dashboard, especially if you're upgrading from an older D-Max. You're not going to know what to do with yourself. There are some things missing in terms of a top spec Ute that you might want. There's no auto dimming rear view mirror. You can't get seat heating in any D-Max, which is a bit of a shortfall. And only the driver's seat comes with electric adjustment. Passenger seat is manual. And in terms of storage in the cabin, it's pretty well catered for as well. There's a pair of glove boxes, which is pretty handy. There's also a top center box up here, which actually works, unlike the old D-Max. It just, no matter how many times you press that button, it just wouldn't open. And there's also, if I can reach, a pair of cup holders on the outsides of the dashboard. That's both sides, and they're right near the vents. So if you've got your aircon on, it should keep your drink cold as well. All right, that's enough about the front. Should we check out the back? Backseat space in the Isuzu D-Max dual cab is pretty good. I've got plenty of space back here. For me, I'm 182 centimeters. That's a 6-footer if you speak in that language. And this seat is set for my driving position. But I will say that my knees are quite high up. There's not a whole lot of under thigh support, but for kids, this is going to be perfectly fine. And if you do have kids, there are dual ISOFIX points and 2 top tether points. You can't fit 3 child seats in the D-Max. And it is reasonably good in terms of accommodation back here. There's a pair of rear air vents, and that's standard on every D-Max dual cab. In this spec, the X-Terrain, there's also a USB port as well, and there's also a little flip down hook for your takeaway bags or shopping bags or whatever you might want to put there, a pair of mat pockets, bottle holders in the doors, and in this spec, a flip down armrest with cup holders as well. So it's not too bad back here. I wouldn't say that it sets any new benchmarks in terms of space, but I've got enough headroom, legroom and tow room to be comfortable for a fair while. Here are the dimensions and details of the dual cab pickup tub for the D-Max range. It is competitive in terms of length, width and depth, but doesn't set any new standards. If you want more information, you can head to our detailed review. You'll find the link in the description below. The same engine is available in every version of the D-Max, a 3-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel with more power and torque than before, but still not as much as some of its rivals. The X-Terrain model is available with a 6-speed automatic only. If you want a manual, you'll have to shop the lower grades. The X-Terrain is 4-wheel drive only, and it comes with a selectable system with high and low range, and there's also a rear diff lock now as well. Be sure to check out Crafty's off-road review. The link is in the pop-out at the top of your screen. Fuel use for the D-Max X-Terrain and for all automatic versions of the new D-Max, whether it's 4x2, 4x4 or any of the body styles, is claimed at 8 litres per 100 kilometres, which is decent for this type of vehicle. And in terms of our real-world fuel use, well, here's what we've seen on test. Now, it's time we took it for a drive. As I said at the start of this video, we're just gonna see what the X-Terrain is like to live with on a day-to-day basis. And to be honest, it's pretty good. Pretty easy to live with. It's very comfortable. The ride, the suspension has been retuned this time around for a little bit more compliance and comfort. It's still got the capability to load almost a ton in this top spec model, and it'll tow 3.5 tons if that's what you're into. And it's still comfortable enough. There's, sure, a little bit of noticeable jitter through the chassis if you're going over little lumps and bumps like we are now. It's better at higher speeds. On the highway, you don't notice those things quite as much, but it's also got 18-inch alloy wheels, so you've got to expect some compromise from that, as well as having a tray ready for a ton. The steering too in this generation of D-Max is much more user-friendly than before. It's just a bit lighter and a bit more easy to maneuver, especially at lower speeds. So when you're parking, or if you need to do a 3 or 5 point turn in a tight street, it's just so easy to twirl the wheel, even though it still does have a ute-like 12.5 meter turning circle. And that steering does also offer a decent amount of feel and feedback, even though it's an electric system. And also you will notice that if all the safety systems are active, that it'll steer in your lane for you. If you've got your hands on the wheel though, just remember you've got to keep your hands on the wheel. The engine is quite good. It's not as hugely powerful as some of its competitors, and it still has that diesel rumble and clatter that we've come to expect of, well, Isuzu products in the past. And now this one is a bit more refined, a little quieter than the previous generation D-Max, but I wouldn't say that it's hushed overall. The transmission is mostly pretty good. At higher speeds, it can be a little bit busy, shifting between 6th, 5th and 4th, basically to keep you in the sweet spot of the engine's torque band. I don't mind that much, but some people might find the noise of it constantly changing gears a little annoying. At lower speeds, the transmission is as you'd expect. It's predictable, it shifts quicker than the previous generation D-Max, and for the X-Terrain model, it just all adds up to a pretty comfortable and really quite nice ute to live with on a day-to-day basis. Safety technology is not just great in the top spec model, you pretty much get the full gamut no matter how much you're spending. That includes a reversing camera, AEB with pedestrian and cyclist detection, lane keeping technology, a system called Turn Assist that'll stop you from dashing in front of oncoming traffic, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and on this grade, front and rear parking sensors. Auto models like this one also get adaptive cruise control, and yes, you can switch the safety gear off when you're off the beaten track. As a flagship model, the Isuzu D-Max X-Terrain is certainly going to catch the eye of other adventurers, parents, or tradies out there on the road. It's got the right look, there's no doubt about that. And while it is quite expensive compared to the previous generation D-Max, it offers plenty of spec and tech to back up that price. I think it's actually pretty good value if you consider all the elements that are packed into this dual cab 4x4 flagship ute. Now, you might be wondering about the score. Well, I'll tell you that in just one sec, but before I do, if you are on YouTube, don't forget, hit like, hit subscribe, share this video with your friends, and hit the bell icon to stay up to date with all of our latest videos. You'll also find the detailed story link in the description below. Now, about that score, well, here it is.